start with the first framework as part of Agile, let's say, framework. Scrum is one of these lightweight Agile framework that helps teams to deliver value iteratively and incrementally. It's widely used in software development, IT, and marketing, product development, and other industries. It's the flexibility and adaptability. Unlike the traditional project management, where all the planning is done upfront, Scrum embraces the change and allows teams to adjust based on the feedback. Scrum is particularly useful for complex and uncertain, rapidly evolving project requirements. The key benefit, as we have discussed earlier for this framework, it's faster delivery cycle through creative sprints. Also, it enables continuous feedback and adaptation and improves the transparency, accountability, and collaboration. Organizations such as Google and Microsoft and Spotify use Scrum to deliver a high quality products efficiently. There are three pillars of Scrum framework. Scrum is built on three fundamental pillars that ensures the teams remain aligned and responsive to change. First, let's start with transparency. So, what does it mean with transparency and Scrum? So, all aspects of the project must be visible to stakeholders and team members. The Scrum team uses the sprint backlog and burn down charts and daily stand up to keep the work transparent, communicate the same to stakeholders. The next pillar here is inspection. An inspection means the teams must regularly review the progress and identify the issues. Having a frequent sprint reviews and sprint perspectives, it helps to assess the performance and to inspect the work. The third pillar we have is adaptation. And that means the Scrum team must continuously adjust their work based on the findings from the inspections. Adaptation happens through the sprint planning and backlog refinement and retrospectives. So these three pillars ensures the continuous improvement and help the teams to respond effectively to any changes. What are the Scrum roles which we already have looked at before, but who's involved in Scrum? Scrum defines three key roles, each with their own responsibilities. And we talked about the Scrum Master, who serves as the facilitator and coach for the team. Also, his job is to remove the impediments or obstacles and ensures the Scrum principles are followed. The next role we say that we have is product owner, and product owner represent the business and customer needs. And his job is to define the product vision and manage the product backlog and help the development team to understand in case there's any confusion that between them and the stakeholders. Third key role we have during Scrum is development team, and development team is a cross-functional group who is responsible to deliver the product increment, who works in a more collaborative and collaborative with the Scrum Master and the product owner. These roles promote the accountability and efficiency in agile teams. The Scrum artifacts. So, what are the key deliverables in Scrum? Scrum artifacts or deliverables helps to track the progress and maintain the transparency. The first artifact here we have is the product backlog, and the product backlog is a dynamic list of features or fixes or requirements which is managed by the product owner. And the product backlog is continuously refined based on the feedback. The next artifact here we have is the sprint backlog. And backlog is a subset of the product backlog, which is selected for a sprint. Includes the tasks that needed to complete the sprint goal. We're gonna discuss what is exactly a sprint goal, what is the product backlog in more detail, what is a sprint, the next session when we start touching all of these events in more depth. And the third artifact on that Scrum have is the increment. An increment is like the work product, or let's say the working product that is delivered at the end of the sprint. It's like piece of software, or it's piece of the, let's say, the functionality that you're trying to build. It's piece of requirements. It's like because you are building, let's say, the product in more increments. So for example, if you have a product that has 20 features, each of these sprints will deliver two features. So each of the sprints will produce an increment, which means that it will produce part of, of the whole product, which is only the features in our scenario. So again, the increment is the working product delivered at the end of the sprint, which should be usable and potentially, let's say, shippable. And these are the five Scrum events, the key ceremonies, we call them. So Scrum uses five key events to maintain the structure, the consistency, and efficiency. Remember that we have the first thing is one of these, let's say, events. It's called sprint. And sprint is usually a time boxed cycle where the work is completed, and usually it takes from 1 to 2, let's say from 1 to 4 weeks. So sometimes you will see that there are sprints which is 2 weeks. Some of the times you will see that there are sprints which is 4 weeks. So it depends on the project, it depends on the complexity, it depends on the size of the project, depends on the size of the team and the uncertainty of the requirements. So the first event here we have is, we said that it's sprint, which is a time boxed cycle where the work is completed. The next event here we have is sprint planning, and sprint planning where the team selects which backlog items to work on. Also, during the sprint planning, the team sets the sprint goal. So again, what exactly is the sprint planning? Think of all of the product backlog where it has all of the product features that the product owner has added. So now the team will gather and will agree on which features should be, let's say, started with based on the product owner, let's say, prioritization. So in case that they have 10 prioritized, let's say, backlog items or features, so the development team selects maybe 3 or 4 of these features to be implemented within a sprint. So this is what calls as a sprint planning, where the team selects which backlog items to work on. And that again, it sets the sprint goal. The next event here we have is the daily scrum. And daily scrum is a short, say a short stand-up meeting to align the team. And the team member answers these key 3 questions to the scrum master. Includes what did you do yesterday, what you are planning to do today, and is there any blockers that is stopping you from accomplishing these tasks. So again, the team members during every day daily scrum, which is 15 minutes, it's recommended to be not more than 15 minutes to enable the team to continue their work. But each of these team members has to provide these answers on what they have done yesterday, what they are planning to do today, and is there is any blockers or let's say issues that's stopping them from doing their work. And the fourth event here we have is the sprint review, and the sprint review is where the team demonstrate the completed work to the stakeholders in order to obtain their feedback and to understand their concerns on these shapeable, let's say, features. And this will allow the team to understand the stakeholder, let's say, uh, feedback, and in terms of let's say adjustment, in terms of whether it meets the requirements. So it's part of the continuous improvement. So in case if the stakeholders has identified any of these features that doesn't fulfill their needs, and then the team has to work on refining the feature again to understand the stakeholder needs. Based on that, it will go back to the backlog and so on. The last event here we have as part of the Scrum is the retrospective. And the sprint perspective is the team where sits and reflect on the sprint and identifies the areas of improvement. So again, we started with having the sprint, we planned the sprint, we picked, let's say, the backlog items or the features that we're gonna implement. Um, let's say the sprint was 2 weeks, so the daily stand up every day, it starts with 15 minutes. And then after, let's say, finishing the two sprint meet, let's say, two sprint, 2 week sprint, team sits with the stakeholder to show them the completed work during the sprint review. And finally, the team sits together to understand what they can improve on their next sprints, what they have done correct, what they have done wrong, what they should do less, what they should do more as part of the sprint retrospective. So these events promote collaboration and continuous learning. But how, let's say, Scrum promotes agility? Scrum aligns with Agile by adopting change and delivering value iteratively, also focusing on the customer and stakeholder feedback. Also through the incremental and, let's say, iterative development. So in case if the work is broken into, let's say, smaller chunks or smaller manageable components, allowing for frequent delivery and feedback by the stakeholders. And again, how it promotes agility, it's by, let's say, emphasizing the importance of having the customer collaboration. And by, as I mentioned, during your sprint review, when you regularly review with the stakeholders that the work were completed and whether it does it mean with their needs or not. So this is how you need to keep your, let's say, customer engaged or stakeholder engaged in order to deliver a value to them or deliver features or a product that is working and making a value to, let's say, to the stakeholders or the end users. How Scrum is used in different industries. So Scrum isn't just limited to IT. It's used also in healthcare and manufacturing and education and government projects. And to have an example here where there's, let's say, a hospital who adopted Scrum to improve maybe the patient scheduling, reducing the waiting time. In IT and software development, we all know that Scrum is it's mainly an IT or software development framework that that, let's say, enhances the framework and the processes within the development team, and let's say encourages the flexibility and the rapid delivery capabilities. When it comes to healthcare, the hospital again use Scrum to improve the patient care processes and to understand the existing processes, to analyze it, to see how it could be, let's say, improved in terms of, for example, development of new processes that streamline the operation and satisfy the patient. Comes to manufacturing, Scrum helps manufacturing teams to improve the production processes and reduce the waste. Here's some of these common challenges that you might face um, in Scrum when adopting it as a new framework. So, common pitfalls include the team struggling with agile adoption, also the unclear priorities and ineffective retrospectives. And the solution to overcome these issues is by having a well, let's say, intensive training teams, to train the teams on agile practices, frameworks, and Scrum, let's say, events, and also, let's say, implementing a small, let's say, sprints in order to test the value and to test the adherence to the Scrum events, and also to, let's say, to minimize the confusion between the team when turning, let's say, a real world project into, let's say, a sprint. Also ensuring a well defined backlog while working with the product owner, understanding these product priority, or the feature priorities. So based on that, they will be able to understand their priorities. Also, to overcome these challenges is by empowering the Scrum Master to remove the blockers. So you as a Scrum Master or the project manager of, let's say, an Agile project, which means in Scrum, we say that you are the Scrum Master. So you as a Scrum Master, you need to remove all of these impediments or blockers that your team faces and work them towards the sprint goal or the product goal or the project goal. Measuring the success in Scrum. So the success and Scrum framework is measured through the team productivity and the customer satisfaction and the continuous improvement. We'll also look into the next session about the velocity, the burn down, and the satisfaction. We'll discuss each of them on what they mean. So, to have a high level on what does velocity means, it measures the amount of work that is completed in a sprint, helping the teams to predict the future performance. The burn down or the sprint burn down chart, it tracks the remaining work, ensuring the team stays on track and meet sprint goals. Again, when we say that measuring the success by measuring the stakeholder or the customer satisfaction, by having a score that indicates how well the product meets the user needs and expectations. And to summarize our session here on the first session on Scrum, we say that Scrum is a lightweight yet a powerful agile framework. Also, it's based on the transparency and inspection and adaptation. And we looked at how, let's say, Scrum emphasize the importance of transparency, and we see how it contributes to let's say, to inspection and adaptation. We also looked at the roles and artifacts that is mostly used in Scrum, also the events and high level to ensure the structured delivery. Again, we say that Scrum isn't only made for, let's say, software or IT. It's all also look we looked at the different industries that is utilizing Scrum.